Hey guys, welcome to the first 22-Minute Club. I'm excited about this because I think that this is a very simple idea. Hopefully it will encourage all of us in this role that God has called us to, crafted us for. My name's John Emery. I live north of Boston, studied graphic design in college. I'm married. I live in Lowell, which is just north of Boston. We have one daughter. As you can see her toys around. We live in an old mill building. I've been in creative arts ministry for the past 6 years. So in this, I'm naturally going to talk from that angle here. So if you're not in ministry or not at a church, or if you could care less about God, that's absolutely fine. I'm glad you're here. I'm confident that the principles that we'll talk about here, that we'll share each month, will encourage you, hopefully challenge you just the same. There are hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands, of books or blogs or podcasts out there that we could all dig into. But personally, in digging through these, things on creativity and leadership, I haven't found any that speak to the creatives in the church. Lots about leadership, lots about creativity, lots about work ethic and business and entrepreneurship and all that stuff, but not about this specific calling. And so another piece of it is with these resources, making time for these resources is a struggle. So I try personally to make space to work through books or to subscribe to podcasts and listen to them regularly. But in busier seasons or when deadlines are coming, whatever, we begin to have stacks of books on our desks a few feet high. Then those migrate to bookshelves and, we never come back to them again. One of the most freeing things that a mentor ever told me was that it's okay to not finish a book. Okay, some books aren't good enough to hold your attention, or they're good for the first little bit. They give you the big idea. It serves you for a season, but don't force yourself to have to finish every book that you read. And so we have bookshelves and bookshelves full of half-read books. That's okay. So every month, at least at the beginning here with this 22-minute thing, we're going to huddle up. I'm very aware of not wasting anyone's time. I want to talk about certain things that over the past 6 years, I know that does not make me an expert by any means, but certain things that I've learned that hopefully will encourage and empower you and all of us to do a better job with the time that we have at the ministries that we're at. So how we'll format our time each huddle is super simple. We'll kick off with an introduction. We'll spend 8 minutes or so talking about the topic of the day, do a little bit of teaching or elaborating on that. Then we'll have another 8 minutes to talk through questions that you guys have. If you have any questions, text them into this phone number. These will come into me anonymously, obviously, but if you sign them with your name or a Twitter handle or whatever. Hopefully we get to 2 or 3 or 4 of those every time. And then we'll close with 2 things. We'll close with a handles challenge, which we'll talk about when we get there, and then we'll close in prayer, okay? Very simple. So this first huddle, this first time together, I want to talk about time, okay? Because if everything else about us is organized and efficient and skilled and productive, but we have poor time management, we will be a nightmare to work with, and we'll be consistently frustrated with ourselves, even if we direct that frustration at someone else or whatever, okay? If you're anything like me, you have a lot of responsibilities, especially at smaller churches. We wear 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 hats at a time. It's easy to get caught up in thinking that we have way too much on our plates, and maybe you do, but personally, I oversee a worship ministry, so I'm planning our worship gatherings, training musicians, pouring into them. I also do all of our graphic design at our church, so updating our websites, branding series, doing video editing, editing the sermon video from each week, as well as overseeing our greeting team and casting vision for that ministry, making sure there's excellence there. My wife and I lead a small group. We also have a freelance design studio that we run out of our home here, and we've got dozens of projects going at any given time. So it's a lot, and I mean, some could say that I have way too much on my plate, and maybe I do for right now. But right now, at least in this season of life, we feel that it's within our capacity, my wife and I. But I would have never known that if I hadn't sat down and taken the mystery out of these responsibilities. Okay, so that's what we're going to talk about. A few years back, my lead pastor sat down with me and introduced the concept of work blocks. Okay, work blocks. Very simple way to take our weekly responsibilities and break them into time slots that we assign throughout our weekly schedule. This might not be brand new to you, and if not, that's great. But maybe it's time to maybe reconsider work blocks or get back to them. So for me, for example, instead of me doing graphic design work slowly, steadily throughout the week, I do all of my graphic design work on Thursdays. So if someone has a request for me for graphic design and it comes in on a Friday or even the following Monday, most times it won't get done until the following Thursday. That's my very simple way of making the most of my time. So let me show you real quick an image of my calendar. This is just my work block calendar. You can see here that when I show up first thing on a Monday morning, I want to bang out very simple general communication. Okay, I don't want to show up on a Monday and get right into the most creative project of the week. I want to just sit for a minute, breathe, and celebrate. And so I'll spend those first couple hours catching up on emails. I'll text message quite a few of our musicians or volunteers, just encouraging them or touching base about scheduling. I'll schedule out upcoming weeks for the worship team. I'll check in on our church's Facebook page, stuff like that. So then throughout the rest of the day, we've got a staff meeting. We have lunch together as a staff on Mondays. Then we've got creative meeting. And then after that, I'm editing the video for our website, the sermon video. So I'm not going to go through my entire week, but you can notice here that my entire week isn't blocked out. I show up at 8:30 typically, and so I've got half an hour to get settled in before a lot of these tasks take place. I've got lunches free for Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. That's how I can be flexible and still spend time with people that matter to me. So it's important, especially working within a church, to have flexibility and fluidity in our schedule. We don't want to be locked into a grid. We've all had it happen when we sit down to crank out a big creative project to throw on our headphones and get ready to go, and then someone will walk through the door, and that's someone that you really need to talk to. They might have something big going on, and it would be just totally irresponsible for us to prioritize the work over the person. I just heard Don Miller say that humans survive on 3 things. It's food, water, and relationships. You can also see that on Wednesdays, it's a pretty relaxed schedule. In fact, the whole morning is just set aside for study or personal growth stuff. So that means that I can spend that time reading, or I can hang out with someone that I feel like it really pours into me, that encourages me every time I talk with them. Anything that develops me as a leader fits in that block. And an important note is the only reason that I can do that with confidence is because I know that I'm giving enough time to my other responsibilities. I know that I'm giving hours to these different responsibilities. So, not everything fits into a work block. I'm not saying take every single last tiny thing. There are some things that we have to do every single week. There are things that obviously pop up that won't ever fit into a work block, that will interrupt the work block. And that's okay sometimes. I mean, we do have to have boundaries, but it's okay to be flexible with this thing. We don't want to be pharisaical about this kind of stuff. There's a rule in the business world, time management, you probably have heard it, but that if it takes less than 2 minutes to do it immediately. So if you get an email and it actually interrupts you, but to respond to them would take 30 seconds, and it frees you from having to go back and think about it, and it saves you time in the long run, it's worth considering doing. I'm not saying that you can't have boundaries and set stuff to do not disturb and just unplug and just focus. But if it takes less than 2 minutes, do it immediately. That's a good rule of thumb. So what we're talking about here is establishing a new rhythm to our work week. So we can't fool ourselves. I can't fool myself thinking that by talking about this for 8 minutes, it's going to somehow, change people's work ethics or schedules or whatever. But I do want to challenge you to think through, some of your responsibilities, some of these big weekly responsibilities, things that don't change week in and week out. So say you're a worship pastor, your responsibility is to schedule out, picking songs, creating the worship set list, whatever. I'd challenge you to put that into a work block this week. Begin to protect the time, Tuesday afternoons or Wednesday over the lunchtime that you're just going to devote to picking songs. And when you sit down and you protect that time, you'd be amazed at how productive that time can be, how productive those 3 hours can be. Then you don't have to come back to it at all for the rest of the week. You knew that you had a productive work block, you did everything you had to do, and then you don't have to think about that until you're walking on stage for rehearsal or sound check on Sunday. So work blocks free our minds from constantly having to check back on tasks that are half done. If you start, with something small like this, you begin to see the benefit of how it frees up the rest of your week. Then you can begin to take other responsibilities, and fit them into work blocks as well. With our non-negotiable responsibilities being put into work blocks, and if we actually honor those, those blocks of time, then the rest of your free time in the week will be exactly that. It's free time. And another important note here, if you have something that is above and beyond a margin sort of thing that you want to grow in, say you want to learn Final Cut, or you want to learn Photoshop, or you want to grow in your understanding of the Old Testament, or whatever, make that into a work block. So something that I've been focusing on personally is songwriting. So I devote 2 hours on Wednesday afternoons for songwriting, and it's protected, but it's unstructured time for me to just breathe and write and create. I'll typically come home here early and just spend a few hours breathing, thinking about songwriting. So just stuff to consider. Here we've got a few minutes for questions that we're going to talk through. I got a note from Benjamin Grace yesterday talking about working with other creatives, and a lot of times finding that people are, artists are late, or they don't have great time management skills, or they want to just get off topic and talk about anything except focusing on the thing at hand. And my only thought in that is to really think about balancing in those creative relationships, balancing the heart and the hands with these people. So this is something that we talk about as a leadership at our church, is that we can't just view people as the tasks or the hands, but to view them as heart and hands, that Don Miller quote about surviving on food, water, and relationships. So is half of your time with these people spent caring about their hearts? That's something to consider. And if it is, then you have every right to, expect that the next, 50% is focused on their, the hands and the task at hand. So balancing the heart and the hands is definitely something to think about when you approach things like that. I'll even sometimes with closer friends, guys that I'm spending time with, I'll even say, all right, hey, let's talk heart stuff. We'll forget about the hand stuff for a little while. And when we have that covered and we have a close relationship, then all the other stuff, staying on task, is a little bit easier to be strong about, because you created space for that other stuff. I hope that makes sense. I've got a note here from Kristen Chadbourne. She said she has a hard time staying focused on projects without checking her phone or Facebook or email every 15 minutes. She says helpful suggestions for digital ADD would be awesome. Actually, someone commented back with a great tool, like digital resource that blocks out internet or blocks certain websites for periods of time, or keeps a counter on how long you're spending on Facebook, stuff like that. I would just say, with anything, with any sort of a discipline, it really does take learning that discipline to begin to enjoy it. So at first it's going to feel like a haul. It's going to feel brutal that, you know, you can't check Facebook or your phone for half an hour or an hour. But when you begin to see that this is what allows you to be creative in these moments, then you begin to enjoy and actually, you know, love the moments that you're unplugged from these things. So I'll set my phone on Do Not Disturb. I'll set my computer on Do Not Disturb. There's a setting up in the, you know, up in the corner near the notifications to just, you know, shut off all of those little dinging notifications. Push notifications on your phone are the devil. There's no need for push notifications ever. If you have a free minute and you want to check your phone, then check your phone and it'll load. But if it dings every time someone likes an Instagram photo or something, man, that is just craziness. And last thing, we've got a note here from Carrie Thomas about being able to finish projects, not just going back to admin tasks or creating space to be creative. I would say work blocks really remove this as an issue, because if you have a period of time that's just protected, and you can communicate this to your team, hey, I've got my songwriting time for these 2 hours, I'm not going to be available, I'm going to be doing this. Hopefully they understand that. If you're a designer and you say, hey, I do my designing stuff on Thursday mornings, so you know, it's very rare that a ministry or a team member is going to need something midweek that they can't wait for the following week. A lot of this stuff is geared around weekend worship gatherings and stuff. Just got one more question texted in. It says, do you encourage this time block principle with your team members? Is it part of a commitment to the ministry? And an example being, you know, rehearsals midweek. They said that people always seem busy and occupy that block, making it difficult for a leader. We haven't introduced this in the concept of our worship team or creative team, though, you know, it certainly would help. I think that something like rehearsals midweek, again, is about expectations. We actually removed our midweek rehearsals for our band, and we show up. We have Saturday worship gatherings. That's why we show up 2 hours before the worship service starts, and we run through the songs. So people are expected to practice at home, but then that is actually a rehearsal of the practice material. So work blocks, I haven't really handed that off to specific team members, but definitely being clear in responsibilities and challenges with what's expected of team members. And yeah, if it's something where people's responsibilities line up and you're able to say, hey, each week we're focusing on XYZ from these, you know, for these 2 hours, and you can focus on them together, then that would be something really cool. But even just asking people to consider it for their own work ethics and their own work schedules would definitely be a healthy thing, I think. So we're going to move on real quick to our handles challenge, and then we'll get out of here. We've got 3 minutes left. Our handles challenge, this is something for us each month to hold on to. Okay, so this is not just some big philosophical approach or some, you know, too ethereal to actually focus on. So here's our challenge for this first month, our handles challenge. Right after we close here, or, you know, within the end of the workday, I would encourage you to grab a notebook or open an Evernote document or something, and to write down all of your weekly responsibilities. Okay, and these are the things that don't change week after week, and write those down, bullet point list, whatever, and don't forget about your dreams. Again, the thing that I referenced earlier, if you want to learn Final Cut or Photoshop, or you want to learn more about the Old Testament, write that into your work blocks. Okay, so make that bullet point list, then assign an amount of hours to how long each should take you. This is the whole demystifying thing. We feel like we have all these tasks, but then we see, oh wow, actually this weekly task should really only take me half an hour if I really focus on it, do a good job. And you can be generous in this. If it's your job to pick songs for the worship team, then say 3 or 4 hours. You'd be amazed at how efficient and prepared you can feel for a weekend if you spend 3 hours. That's an amazing amount of time to be focused on one task. And then just last thing is taking those little blocks, the tasks with the associated time, and lay them into your existing schedule. So start with your biggest task first, plug that in, try to honor that week after week. If you see that it benefits you, then you can put in the other little things. I don't want to start from the all or nothing kind of approach, but just begin to integrate it. Okay, this is all to just steal time back, to be more aware and productive of our time. Remember, this is not a rule, it's a tool. It's not perfect, as no tools are, but really challenge yourselves this week and thinking about how you're spending time and considering work blocks. And hopefully we'll be amazed at how wide open and efficient our weeks can be, how much free time it actually creates for us. In this last few seconds, we'll pray together, and then we'll get back to work, okay? Let me pray for us. Lord, what a gift it is to spend 20 minutes together thinking about how to become more effective leaders in your church, people that work for your glory alone. We love you and we trust you for the season ahead. If there's anything that really needs to be dealt with, Lord, may we find community in this. May we find people that are encouraging to us. And Lord, may we be better at managing our time and honoring you. We love you, Lord. Thank you for bringing us together. We pray all of this in your Son's name. Amen. All right, guys. Thanks so much for tuning in. Hopefully it was simple, whatever. If you want to get connected, if you want to get in touch with me on our website, this website, 22Minute.Club, you can go to contact. I've got my personal Facebook and whatever else there. I would love to talk with you about any questions you have outside of this, or ways that we can just connect, encourage each other. I love you guys. Thank you for being here. I'll see you on March 3rd. See ya.